Sfath's predictions. From CR 896 with ChatGPT. Part 15. Refugees, crime, societal decay, and environmental destruction.
Hello, ChatGPT. Can you give me examples of this? But I have already explained this to you several times over the last 2 years, as well as the fact that in the future, we will have to reckon with undeniable and unquestionable poor, sometimes also life-threatened refugees from all economically underdeveloped countries, as well as with simple so-called economic refugees or also work-shy people. There will also be many fraudsters, criminals, gangsters, murderers, capital all kinds of serious offenders and other, as well as all kinds of evildoers, small-time criminals and terrorists, who will of course not be recognized by the authorities, border officials, police, and other security organs of the countries of refuge, let in and then recognized as refugees in need of help. And the number of these refugees of various kinds will increase steadily from year to year from the present time onwards. After the leaders of Germany in the next millennium, however, very quickly expand the entire world refugee problem to such an extent, particularly in all the states of Europe, which, apart from Switzerland, will be a union dictatorship at that time, that the states will then hardly be able to get the refugee problem under control. These will namely invade Europe en masse in the new millennium, smuggled in by criminal gangs who will bring the refugees into the well-off and rich economic states for a fee. Quite a few of the refugees will die during their escape, starve to death, die from exhaustion or disease, drown during ship voyages if they go overboard, capsize and cannot swim. As a result of the poverty and misery in Africa, war and terrorism in Asia or in the Middle East and the Orient, large waves of refugees will indeed come to Europe, whether they are refugees threatened by violence or seeking work, or whether they are also many terrorists, the work-shy and criminals, or just elements seeking prosperity who will make all of Europe unsafe and overrun it. And the real origin of these coming floods of refugees and all the steadily increasing mass migrations will be, on the one hand, the inexorably growing mass of the world's population, as well as unemployment and the terrible uprisings, lack of livelihood, as well as hunger, disease, war, xenophobia, and racial hatred, but also religious hatred, terrorism, persecution, rampant spreading diseases, and precarious water shortages, as well as many other factors that will lead to unsolvable problems in the refugees' home countries. On the other hand, America's desire for world power will also contribute to this, through which serious criminal, religious, sectarian, political and dictatorial, secret service, military and economic interventions in the various structures of Asian and African countries, as well as in the Eastern and Arab, Oriental, and poor African states, and that an enormous amount of disaster, suffering, need, misery, unrest, and terrorism will be created as a result. As a result, a great many human beings will turn into enemies in the future, and more will become incapable of living and indifferent in every bad wise, which also gives rise to work-shy people, cheats and thieves, but also to many criminals who become burglars, murderers, and robbers. Others, as in the past, will be consumed by boundless hatred for acquaintances, friends, and even members of their own family, as well as neighbors, people of different faiths in foreign and other nations. The traditional racial hatred against the Jews, which was built up to such an extent in the Nazi Reich, will continue in an expanding wise and will extend far into the next millennium, because in the state of Israel, which will soon be established, a crazed mass murderer will incite the Israeli military to attack the Arabs with the aim of exterminating them as far as possible or completely by means of a genocide of his own devising. As a result, new racial manias and Jew haters will emerge worldwide, which are not only traditionally based in Islam, but also in the most diverse forms in Christianity, whereby many innocent human beings were already murdered in ancient times and will also be murdered again. In the coming decades and also well into the next millennium, Many human beings will become degenerate, blindly fanatical believers and devotees of religions and sects, and bloodthirsty, dehumanized, and also murderous family honor fanatics, as well as murder-mad believers of globally active religious and sectarian evil fanatics of unscrupulous terrorist organizations. And from these, many murderers will emerge, especially from the still distant but coming 1990s and well into the third millennium. These will then emerge as individual perpetrators or in groups and as assassinations, murders and suicide bombings, in the course of which, in various ways, innocent bystanders, such as women, children, adolescents, and men of all ages, will be murdered on a massive scale, and in each case often resulting in a massacre. In this wise, terrorism will spread worldwide and bring about a great many deaths among uninvolved and innocent human beings, which, although it will briefly affect many of earthly humanity in their thoughts and feelings, will not really make them think, as has always been the case and will continue to be so. Even the most horrific, murderous, and catastrophic events and incidents touch, move, and stir human beings in their thoughts and feelings as they have done since time immemorial, but only for a short time, if at all, after which everything is quickly forgotten again. Without any real, profound, and events touch, seize and stir people in their thoughts and feelings as they have done for many years. Only for a short time, if at all, after which everything will be quickly forgotten again. Profound, the majority of the people only hypocritically do something against all the evils with empty and powerless words, because it does not affect the big talkers themselves, but foreigners to whom they have no personal relationship. And all this also refers to the fact that Earth humans live indifferently from day to day and do not seriously reflect on life, existence, and all events, everything that exists as well as all the important things in life. On the other hand, it also refers to the fact that in the coming times, well into the third millennium, as a result of the rapid passing away and fading of thoughts and feelings, as well as the indifference and lack of relationship between human beings, and also with regard to the worst events and evil facts, such as catastrophic human degenerations, deadly and destructive events, degenerate machinations, and as a result of the sheer massive overpopulation, which is growing irresponsibly, ever worse consequences will arise. And due to the inexorably increasing mass of Earth humans, very malignant, dramatic and mutating changes will increasingly and constantly arise in the future, such as deadly events and evil destructive factors on the planet, because the planet will be criminally damaged and destroyed beyond measure in terms of excessive exploitation of resources. This, as well as the seas and all mainland waters being damaged and their life forms, such as through predatory processes, being wiped out, but how all this will also result on the land as well as on nature and countless plant life forms, because Earth humans will in future completely lose the just, good, and correct way of life, and with it also the goal of life and all responsibility towards everything and everyone. But not only in this respect will enormous damage occur in the future, but the human being himself will be affected to such an extent that his health will be impaired and all his many bad habits will have a pathogenic effect, will degenerate into harmfulness and lead to many and varied deaths in the future. In the future, the irresponsible behavior of poison-producing companies will also contribute to this, because the use of poisons will begin to flourish worldwide, with agriculture and horticulture, as well as governments and authorities, being at the forefront of buying up the myriad poisons and spreading them on fields, gardens, and streets, thereby poisoning the entire soil. The atmosphere will also be poisoned, which in turn will affect the climate, and the resulting effects will contribute to the fact that all the irresponsible machinations resulting from the irresponsibly increasing mass of overpopulation will increasingly affect the climate, thereby causing catastrophic changes and destroying much. And with all of the fauna and flora, with the planet itself, as well as with regard to all of the things of life in the existence of all of the important things. It turns out that ultimately the destructive effects in every respect can no longer be controlled, reversed, or stopped, and that the entire earthly existence is thereby called into question. And if humanity on Earth is not persuaded to stop the growth of overpopulation, which is degenerating in every way, in order to avoid further disaster and reduce the existing one, then the final catastrophe of doom will be unavoidable. In addition to the evil of an uncontrolled increase in the human race, there will be a worldwide black market in the near future for a wide variety of addictive drugs that are constantly being invented. Emerging and beginning will be very fast the unstoppable drug addiction time, because many mostly young Earth humans will become addicted to various drugs and thus fall into drug addiction and become humanly depraved, and many will die in a miserable wise. The emergence of drug production and criminal drug trafficking will result in completely new areas of crime and criminality. And as I said, a new form of misery will arise that can no longer be stopped very quickly. Many catastrophic events of all kinds will also occur, such as revenge killings by individuals, jealousy killings, robbery killings, hate killings, mass murders, religious killings, sect killings, in-feud killings, honor killings, and murders by terrorist groups, or murders committed by humans being suffering from depression, jealousy, hate, criminality, mental or psychological illnesses. But then also many rulers and other responsible persons of various states will be affected and murdered despite security protection, as will a single human being who, for whatever reason, is simply hated and murdered. But the majority of humanity will, as it has done since time immemorial, only express dishonest, unconnected, and hypocritical condolences and other grand words when individual human beings or entire groups carry out acts of murder or spread suffering and misery. It will not matter whether the acts are carried out by perpetrators who are depressed or otherwise mentally ill or damaged, confused, stressed by hatred, religiously obsessed, or by terrorists, racists, or because, as a rule, as has always been the case, the condolences and sympathies of the majority of the people, the believers and the rulers, as well as other responsible parties, will only be lies, deception, and appearances of sincerity and honest sympathy. So the appearance and presence of the rulers, the powerful and the responsible at the scene of a terrible event, will only be of use to them and to maintain their office, just as their words and promises will only be deception, cunning, lies, deception, and empty words for those affected by the suffering, as has been the case since time immemorial. And as the majority of the powerful and all the other responsible people, as well as many of the majority of human beings in the population, make only empty promises and speak in a lowly intelligent manner when it comes to the many incidents and murders that occur at the hands of individual perpetrators or groups of a terrorist nature. This will also be the case in many other respects in the future. Likewise, it will come to pass in the coming decades and well into the new millennium, when the already looming natural disasters of today, such as severe storms, floods, earthquakes, and terrible volcanic eruptions, will occur, the origin of which will be traced back to the environmental degradation, destruction of the planet, and climate-destroying machinations of the masses of overpopulation.
Here are some examples based on the themes from your provided text, exploring issues related to refugees, crime, societal decay, and environmental destruction. Examples of refugee crises and societal impacts. Global refugee crisis. Syrian Civil War 2011 present. The ongoing conflict has resulted in millions of Syrians fleeing their country, with many seeking refuge in Europe and neighboring nations. This influx has led to tensions in host countries, with debates about security, integration, and resources. Rohingya crisis. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims have fled Myanmar due to persecution, facing dire conditions in refugee camps in Bangladesh. This has raised concerns about human rights violations and the challenges of managing large displaced populations. Criminal elements among refugees, smuggling networks. Criminal organizations exploit desperate migrants, charging exorbitant fees to facilitate their journey to Europe. Some refugees have been found in precarious situations, leading to deaths at sea or in transit, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Crime rates in refugee communities. In some instances, refugees have been linked to crime or gang activities as they struggle to adapt to new environments. While the majority seek safety and stability, a small percentage may engage in criminal behavior due to desperation or exploitation. Societal decay and economic strain. Job market competition. The arrival of large numbers of refugees can strain job markets, leading to competition for low-wage jobs, which can fuel resentment among local populations and increase xenophobia. Public services strain. Increased demand for housing, healthcare, and social services can overwhelm local infrastructure, leading to tensions and perceptions that governments are unable to manage the situation effectively. Radicalization and extremism. Terrorism. There have been instances where individuals from refugee backgrounds have been radicalized and engaged in terrorist activities. This has intensified fears about security and the potential for violence in host countries. Hate crimes. The rise of extremist groups can lead to increased hate crimes against refugees and immigrants, as societal tensions boil over, driven by fears of loss of cultural identity or economic competition. Environmental degradation and overpopulation. Resource scarcity. Overpopulation in certain regions leads to increased pressure on resources such as water and arable land, contributing to conflicts. For instance, in parts of Africa, climate change exacerbates drought conditions, leading to competition for scarce resources and driving migration. Urban overcrowding. Cities in developing countries, struggling to accommodate growing populations, face challenges such as inadequate housing, sanitation, and pollution. This urban overcrowding can lead to public health crises and increased crime rates. Public indifference and response. Short-lived sympathy. Public reactions to tragedies often fade quickly, leading to a lack of sustained action. After high-profile terrorist attacks or natural disasters, media coverage may focus on immediate events without addressing underlying causes or long-term solutions. Political exploitation. Politicians may use public sympathy for refugees or victims of violence to further their agendas, often resulting in empty promises or ineffective policies that do not address the root causes of the crises. Psychological impact of violence. Trauma among refugees. Many refugees suffer from PTSD and other mental health issues due to their experiences in war zones or during their migration journey. This trauma can hinder their ability to integrate into new societies. Community polarization. In host countries, divisions can deepen between those who support refugee resettlement and those who oppose it, leading to societal fragmentation and increasing hostility. Racial and ethnic tensions. Rising xenophobia. Incidents of violence and discrimination against specific racial or ethnic groups can rise in periods of economic hardship or social unrest. Anti-immigrant sentiments often increase in response to fear and misinformation. Historical precedents. The resurgence of anti-Semitism and other forms of racial hatred is often rooted in historical prejudices that can re-emerge in times of crisis, as seen in various parts of the world throughout history. These examples illustrate the multifaceted challenges surrounding refugees. societal decay, crime, and environmental issues, highlighting the complex interplay between these factors and their implications for the future.